I never thought I'd see her again. It was just a regular morning, or so I thought. I'd flown back to my hometown for the first time in years, mostly for business, partly out of curiosity. A reunion with ghosts, I guess. I told myself it was just a coffee break before heading to the meeting, nothing more. The cafe sat on the corner of Maple and 3rd, still painted in that same worn-out teal I remembered from when I was a teenager. It was one of those places frozen in time. The wooden chairs creaked the same way, and the smell of cinnamon rolls still lingered in the air like memory itself. I pushed the door open, the bell chiming overhead, and stepped inside. My coat damp from the morning drizzle, I walked over to the counter and ordered a black coffee, just like I always used to. Old habits, I suppose. I looked around absent-mindedly, more curious than anything, and then I saw her. My heart stopped. She was sitting by the window. A soft morning light framed her face, and for a moment, I wasn't 52, I was 27 again, standing on a train platform, holding a one-way ticket to a future I thought I needed more than I needed her, but there she was. Ella, the woman I had loved more than I could admit, and hurt more than I'll ever forgive myself for. I left her without a word 25 years ago. No phone call. No letter. Just vanished. She didn't know why. I never gave her the chance to ask. I told myself I was chasing dreams, but the truth is, I was running. Running from something real. From her, and now, 2.5 decades later, I stood with a coffee in my hand, watching her smile. She hadn't seen me yet. But I saw her, the way her lips curved at something someone said, that someone sat beside her. A young man, maybe 24, 25. Tall, with dark hair and sharp cheekbones. There was something in the way he laughed, something about his eyes, something familiar. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I tried to look away, but my gaze was locked. Was it possible? No. It couldn't be. Could it, after all these years? Was he? That's when she turned, and her eyes met mine. She hadn't changed much. Sure, there were faint lines at the corners of her eyes now, silver strands woven into her chestnut hair, but that softness, that light in her, it was still there. I watched from the corner of the cafe, seated in the shadows like a ghost of my former self. I don't know why I didn't walk over. Maybe part of me hoped she wouldn't recognize me. Maybe I didn't recognize myself. As I sat there, memories came rushing back like floodwaters breaching a dam. We were just kids when we met. Ella was 19. I was 21. She worked at her aunt's flower shop on 6th Street. I was working 2 jobs and taking night classes, always dreaming of more, of skyscrapers, corner offices, a name people wouldn't forget. She didn't need all that. She was content with walks by the river, reading in bed, dancing barefoot in the kitchen. She believed in small joys. I believed in building empires. Back then, I thought her dreams were too small. And mine, too big for her. One night, I told her I was leaving for Chicago. A firm had offered me an unpaid internship, a chance. She cried, begged me to stay. Said we could make it work, but I didn't want to drag her along. Or maybe I didn't want her to hold me back. So I said the cruelest thing I could think of: you're not part of the life I want. And just like that, I left. No goodbyes. No explanation. I erased her like she'd been a mistake, only, she never was. I've been married twice since then. Built my fortune. Got everything I wanted. But every relationship I touched turned cold, every win felt hollow. I chased the world, but I never found home again. Now, here I was, hiding in plain sight, watching the only woman who ever made me feel like I belonged, and that's when I looked at the boy, no, the young man beside her, tall, calm. Something in the way he tilted his head when he listened to her, it was familiar, the sharp angle of his jaw, the dimples that appeared when he smiled, even the way his fingers fidgeted with his coffee cup. I'd seen that nervous tick in the mirror. My heart began to pound. I swallowed hard. Could he be? No, she would have told me, right? Unless she didn't think I deserved to know. My hands were trembling. I couldn't sit there any longer, couldn't keep watching the life I might have had unfold just a few feet away. I downed the last of my lukewarm coffee, grabbed my coat, and stood up to leave. But just as I reached the door, I heard her voice. "Daniel?" I turned around slowly, heart in my throat. She was standing there. Close now. Older, wiser, and somehow more beautiful than I remembered. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said softly. My voice caught. I managed to faint, "Hi," as if that could possibly carry the weight of everything I should have said 25 years ago. There was silence between us, the kind you don't fill with small talk. "You look different," she said, her smile wavering. "So do you," I replied, barely meeting her eyes. She glanced back at the table. The young man was looking at us curiously. Waiting. "You should meet my son," she said, voice steady. "He's been wanting to meet you for years." The words hit like a punch to the chest. I stared at her, stunned. "What?" I whispered. She nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "His name is Aiden." "He's yours, Daniel." I couldn't breathe. All the noise in the cafe faded into static. You knew I was here?" "That I'd?" I stammered. She shook her head gently. "No. I didn't know. But when I saw you, I knew I had to tell you the truth." A flood of memories came crashing down. That night, the last time I saw her, I didn't know. She never told me. I had no idea she was pregnant. "Why didn't you reach out?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Because I didn't want to chase someone who ran," she said, calmly. "I wanted to raise him without bitterness. Without him thinking he wasn't wanted. He's asked about you since he was old enough to notice other kids had fathers. I told him what I could. The truth, and the grace." Tears stung the back of my eyes. I couldn't speak. "You abandoned me," she continued, her voice tightening, "but I made sure he never felt abandoned. I promised myself I wouldn't let my pain become his story." I had nothing to say. What could I say? A child. A whole life I'd missed. Guilt wrapped itself around my throat like a noose. I thought I had outrun my past. But there it was, flesh and blood, sitting by the window, sipping coffee with my eyes in her heart. I followed her back to the table like a man walking through a dream. Aiden stood up politely when we approached. He extended his hand with quiet confidence, just like I used to. "Nice to meet you," he said. His voice was calm, respectful. He didn't smile much, but his eyes were sharp, studying me, measuring me. We sat a day. The conversation stayed surface level at first: college, books, weather. He was in law school, top of his class. His mother beamed with pride when she spoke about him, but I could tell he didn't need the praise. He carried his own sense of worth. Still, the air between us was thick, heavy with things unsaid. Then, as Ella stepped away to take a phone call, Aiden looked at me. "I know what you did to her," he said. "I know you left." His words weren't angry. There was no bitterness. Just a fact. A quiet wound he'd carried with grace. "She never said anything bad about you," he added. "But I figured it out." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I was a coward," I said. He didn't agree. He didn't argue. He just stared at me for a moment, then looked away. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, surrounded by the silence of everything I hadn't said for decades. My hands trembled as I pulled out a notepad and pen. I started writing a letter. "Ella, I'm sorry for disappearing. For everything. I thought I was chasing a better life, but I left the best part of it behind." The words came, but they felt small, meaningless. What could possibly undo 25 years of absence? I stared at the paper, frustrated. Angry. At myself. At my choices. At how blind I'd been. And then, like a gut punch, I saw him, my father, rage in his eyes. A bottle in his hand. A man who walked out when I was 9 and never came back. I remembered swearing I'd never be like him, and yet, here I was, the very thing I hated. That realization cracked something inside me. I folded the letter. Tossed it aside. It's not words I owe them, I whispered aloud. It's time. It's truth. It's effort. Maybe even pain. I didn't know if I could fix what I broke, but I knew I had to try, before it was too late. A few days later, I got a message from Aiden. Can we meet? Just us. I didn't hesitate. I felt hopeful. Maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe this was the beginning of something. We met at a quiet park just before sunset. He was already there, sitting on a bench, staring out at the trees. He didn't smile when I approached. Thanks for coming, he said, motioning to the seat beside him. There was a long silence before he pulled out a folder from his backpack. Thick, organized, labeled. What's this? I asked, confused. He handed it to me. Inside, newspaper clippings, screenshots, property records, articles, about me. You've been researching me? I asked. He nodded slowly. 4 years. There were documents about my companies, interviews I'd done, public records, legal filings. Even the failed merger from 3 months ago, the one that cost me a $50 million deal. Why? I asked, my chest tightening. He looked me dead in the eyes. Because I needed to know everything about the man who destroyed my mother. His voice was calm. Cold. You left her with nothing, and she still refused to hate you. I couldn't understand it. I needed to understand it. I felt the air leave my lungs. He continued, almost too steady. 3 years ago, I interned at your firm. Under a different name. Quietly, I worked in operations, got access to sensitive data. He paused, then looked at me again. That deal you lost? The confidential reports that landed in your competitors' hands? That was me. It hit like ice through my veins. I blinked. Why would you? Because I thought it would make me feel something, he said. Revenge. Justice. Closure. I don't know. I stared at him, speechless. You never came back. You never checked in. She cried for months and still smiled when she talked about you. You ghosted her like she was nothing, and I grew up watching her piece herself back together. He stood up, his voice sharper now. I wanted to hurt you. Like father, like son, right? I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Then, the cruelest twist of all. She doesn't know, he said. She never will. I lied to her, just like you did. He turned and started walking away. You wanted to forget your past. But your past grew up, wore your eyes, and burned down your empire. And just like that, he was gone. I sat there, stunned. Numb. Everything I'd built, everything I'd run toward, undone by the very blood I didn't know I had. My past didn't just catch up, I whispered to myself. It raised its own weapon. A few days later, I found myself back at the same café. The place hadn't changed much. Still quiet, still quaint. But everything felt different now. I walked in, and there she was, Ella, sitting by the window, just like before, her soft smile lighting up the room as she saw me. My heart stuttered. How was this possible? How could she still look at me like that? She waved, and I walked over to her. I sat down, feeling like a stranger in my own skin. A man who didn't deserve this kind of warmth. This kind of peace. She greeted me with that same gentle smile, still unaware of the storm I'd unleashed, the things I had done, the things her son had done. It's good to see you again, Daniel, she said softly. I didn't think we'd meet like this. I nodded, trying to swallow the guilt that threatened to choke me. I've been thinking a lot about things. About the past, I began, my voice shaky. I want to get to know my son. She looked at me with those kind eyes, the same kindness she always had. He's always needed a father, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't imagine how much. I could feel the weight of my mistakes in every word, every breath. And as I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of my past, I realized something. Sometimes, we think we buried the past. But it never stays buried. It just grows in silence, waiting for the moment to rise again. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to confess everything, but I knew it wasn't my place. Not yet. Not when I hadn't done the work to fix what I'd broken. Her smile faded as she sipped her coffee, and I felt like a fraud sitting across from her. A fraud who had broken her heart, who had abandoned everything he once held dear. And yet, she still sat there, offering me her forgiveness, her kindness. As I stood up to leave, I felt a new sense of purpose settle in me. Revenge is never loud, I thought. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shout. Sometimes, it just waits. And sometimes, you even love it before it hits you. I walked out of the cafe and into the uncertain future. I didn't know if I could fix everything. But I knew one thing for sure, it had to be me who tried. I owed them that much.